It is the RotoBaller PGA show for the Travelers Championship after a wonderful US Open. We've got an amazing guest on the show with us that I am a huge fan of. We got my main man, Luke, all the way from his wonderful YouTube channel and Patreon, which is in the description below. Please check that out. Luke, what is going on this fine Monday evening?
Just trying to recover after that crazy Sunday that we had, but stoked for a signature event this week. We're right back at it with literally the world's best just a couple of days later. So stoked to be at it with you guys.
Stoked to be at it. We've got the world's best minus Rory McIlroy, and that's because Bryson DeChambeau kicked D's ass. Spence, you were on Rory last week. How are you doing?
It was a profitable week. That's the positives there. You know, here's the Rory discussion, and this is the only thing I'm going to say about it. Like, whether he wins another major or not, that is what's going to be discussed. And I think more so for me, it comes down to what's the actual fair prices that we're getting on him. But look at what he's done. 37 majors since his last win, 21 top 10 finishes. I feel like at some point this ends up turning around. It's the same conversation that we had with Xander Byron over and over again. My model has taken on this belief specifically over, I would say, the last 6 months or so, where there's a certain separation that's occurred from, yes, Scottie's in his own world, and then you get this slight drop off into the Xander and Rory range. And then it's the Oberg and Morikawas and all of them. And you get these live guys that are sprinkled in and out of the mix. I think Rory is still going to get one at some point. He is just too competitive and too in there every single week. But look, Byron, I play the game every single major, it feels like, with Rory, and it hasn't come through, unfortunately. And that's one of the worst losses I've seen somebody take. Like, I can forgive the miss on 18. I think that one was
slimy.
It was a slimy little putt there. The one on 16, there was no excuse for that one. And you miss on 16, and then all of a sudden you get that knee knocker that's going to get a little bit of a twist and turn to it on 18. And all of a sudden you don't make that putt either. And I will say, and I was very fortunate when you look at last year at the US Open, I have Wyndham Clark. And a lot of what Rory did down the stretch to not win the golf tournament, it's like you get the ebbs and the flows there. There have been so many moments with Rory, it feels like, to where maybe he hasn't given his best stuff, but players have gotten up and down against him in every single situation to make him not get across the finish line. And you still have to make putts at the end of the day to win. It's a tough spot for him at this moment. It was unfortunate from a bankroll standpoint, but still a profitable week.
Yeah, that's what we like to preach over here, Luke, is myself in particular. I've been ice cold on the outright front, but you know what? I'm hanging in there with the placements and all the things that we do to try and subsidize that black hole of betting winners, because I just bet second placers and that's my jam. So it is what it is. I've made peace with that nonsense. We just bet the placement market and the E-Trace. Like, I do not bet outright without E-Trace anymore, because it's the only way for me to ever get a sweat, because I've had Benny on miss 4-footers and the rest of that nonsense all perspiring from there. So what was your takeaway from the US Open?
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of the same here, by the way. The outright market has been a huge black hole for myself as well. Only ones I've hit have been live outrights with Scottie twice. And that's been about it to this point. So yeah, for me, it's been a lot of props for me that have gotten me out of that black hole. But yeah, US Open, I kind of had a feeling that he was going to collapse in some sort of fashion. I mean, me and my buddies were watching on the couch together, and I turned to them. I was like, this is when Rory pulls a Rory. And I was like, it's unfortunate, but I'm very confident that we're going to see something go down. And I didn't think it was going to be as dramatic as what we saw. But when he missed on 16, it was like, oh boy, here we go again. 17 was, kind of righted the ship a little bit there. Then on 18, it was like, okay, he got himself out of trouble, was going to get up and down. I was like, all right, this is great to see. Maybe he'll finally get into a playoff, show us what he's got. And then that putt, I actually thought it was a little bit closer to the hole than it was. I wasn't listening to the commentary as much. I had it actually over there on the side as I was playing some games with the mates. And then I see him miss that putt, and then just, I couldn't believe it at first. And then after a few seconds, I was like, it's Rory, I guess. It's unfortunate. He's 100% going to win another major, and it's not a matter of if, it's when for him. I'll honestly be an investor in him going forward, but it's got to be at a track where he can get like a 4 or 5 shot lead. I can't have him within 2 shots on those last few holes because it's a mental thing for him for sure.
It's 1,000% mental. I mean, when you've made 496 of the same things consecutively, and then when it matters most, you can't do it. That is the definition of getting inside your head. Like, what are we doing? But hey, that's Bryson did the same thing. He also missed a shorty, and we're not speaking about that because of a pitching wedge that he pretty much chunked out of the bunker. Like we don't even know if he hit that perfectly. I think he said he's trying to miss it short and still kind of this is the thing. Like you're trying to bet on the smallest of margins and anything can happen, man. But at the end of the day, there are some people that just thrive in that moment. Like when Cam Smith is playing good enough, when Brooks is playing good enough, they tend to just savor that. John Rahm as well. And then Scottie anytime before like May, loves that kind of situation. So the rest of the time, he just does not show up. Spence, do you want to chat about what Scottie got up to this weekend?
Well, I just want to say one more thing to that, and then we can have the Scottie discussion. I agree with you. There are certain players that rise to the occasion when they get the moment, and Bryson did rise to the occasion. I also think, though, he ran very pure during that event. There were so many missed drives where he missed everything, and you need that sometimes to get across the finish line of a golf tournament. And, that was one of those spots where he was a negative trajectory mover in my model for upside. I wasn't going to get there personally in the outright market. I thought all the value was baked out with all the bets that had come in from a lot of the public money that had hit with him. And, it's one of those things where it is what it is at the end of the day. It's a swing that ends up, affecting the week a little bit. But as we all talked about here, it's not just outright bets. We're trying to find other markets to find value. With the Scottie discussion, it's kind of like you and I talked about on the show last week. We're talking about like positive and negative trajectories and models and movements and all this stuff. I was not a believer that the putter was 100% back. You took that specific green complex that he was going to get. He was a negative trajectory mover for me on that surface. He had everything hit him in the wrong direction with it. Top 10 projected score still at the end of the day with it. And that's what you expect to have from him with the ball striking. And he way underperformed those outputs that we got. But, look, it's professional golf. We talked about the volatility of the course. There was going to always be certain players that were going to hit the highs and the lows of that. And Scottie just couldn't make a putt. I don't think that that's any indication moving forward of what we're at. The ball striking still looked great. He just didn't make putts on a surface that historically inside of my model, he has struggled at times. So I think it's just a simple write-off of that with him.
Yeah. And you're right, Spence. Maybe his mental capacity also, like you mentioned, he just absolutely took care of business at the Memorial. You've got all those obligations afterwards, all that jazz. You didn't have the perfect run-up to a US Open, right? Like both of his majors now, he's had some stuff. Not a lot of people are good enough to win the tournament before a major and still have to try and contend. Scottie Scheffler's now playing too good of a golf, essentially, to kind of provide himself with the best opportunities in these majors. So some tricky stuff there from him, but I think he's still going to bounce back. We've got an interesting week coming up this week with him. We'll chat about that as we go through our rankings of our top 10 golfers. But Luke, what are you looking for the guys playing at TPC River Highlands this week in a nutshell?
Yeah, so 2 major things for me that I'm trying to hunker down on, because I think sometimes we try and look at too many stats. I mean, we kind of bog ourselves down with too much analysis. For me, it's fairways hitter number 1, whether that's good drive percentage, regular driving accuracy. I think that matters around this track, especially with the 4-inch rough that they have. They kind of spruced it up a little bit when they made it a signature event. So I think you saw that last year. I think you're going to see it this year as well. And then the other half is medium, or I guess just mid-iron approaches. So from 125 to 175, that's the real like honey pocket that I'm looking at. So 125 to 150, if you're a proximity bucket guy, 150 to 175. And even if you're not, into looking at specific proximity buckets, I think you can look at just regular old approach heading in. This is going to be an irons fest. It typically is a second shot golf course. And you've had players that maybe aren't the best off the tee pop here because of that second shot success. So yeah, it's off the tee accuracy and then those mid irons.
Absolutely. Spence, anything else to add to that?
No, I think Luke said that pretty well. Like they've definitely made a concerted effort with some of the minor restorations that were done after Keegan Bradley won last year to transform this away from being one of those bomb and gouge facilities. Extra rough added, narrowed fairways. Luke said it best. I'm also looking for a little bit more accuracy over distance. You're going to get nearly a 70% rate of proximities or approach shots that are going to come from within 175 yards. So I don't think you necessarily have to be one or the other with it. Like golfers that are short off the tee are still going to be able to have that advantage if you have that mid to short iron proximity. Players that are long, I still think that there are certain routes that you can go where, Bubba kind of did this the best in the past. And I know it's a different course that we're going to get this time, but Bubba's mentality always was just grip it and rip it as far as you can and give me a short iron in hand and I'll figure out how to score from there. I still think that there's some semblance that's going to come into play of that, which is one of the reasons why whenever we get these deviations from what we have gotten in the past, I never like to alter my model over the top with it. Like, I think when you make too many changes, and like Luke talked about, sometimes we look at too many stats, and that is correct. We also sometimes make too big of changes off of like expected transformations of a course that never actually come to fruition. And we'll get a better indication as the years go on of what this track is really going to become. But it's just minor deviations compared to what we have seen over the past 5 years. And I think that's kind of just pushing me a little bit more in that direction of accuracy because of this thick rough at the course.
Yeah, it's a pretty simple situation. The course history. Usually when there's a course history that's super sticky, there's specific traits about a course that kind of stick out and allow guys to really shine. So I think we've covered the course perfectly enough this week. Let's dive into our top 10 ranked golfers. Like I said, we've got Joe Idoni's top 10 rankings on the RotoBaller PGA website there. Those are free for you. Luke's stuff's in the description below. Me and Spence are going to be handing out our models. So is Luke. We're going to give one each to everybody. So let's actually start with this. Out of just pure curiosity, let's take a peek here. And first person to say who Luke's top 10 golfer is, the number 10th ranked golfer, before we really get into all of this stuff, let's take a, actually, you know what? I can see Tony Finau over there. So let's go with that. Hit me with Luke's 9th ranked golfer, and we'll give you the first person to hit us with Luke's 9th ranked golfer in the chat over here on the YouTube channel. No, I'm all over the place. Like I said to you guys in the studio, my parents are watching, and now I've got performance anxiety. So here we go. We're going to get him out the way. Luke, talk to us about your number 10 ranked guy.
So my number 10 ranked golfer is Sam Burns. So he's actually rating better than I expected for this golf course. I mean, normally you like Sam Burns at a off the tee heavy course. I mean, we know that he can get into a real groove when it comes to the off the tee play, but I guess it's just the form that was getting him towards the top of my modeling. If you take a look at the last 12 measured rounds, I use that for a lot of my recent form. He's been popping a lot more than you'd expect off the tee. So he's gaining about 0.6 strokes per round there. But most surprisingly, the guy's been an around the green guru recently. He's gaining about 2/3 of a stroke per round there, 3/4 of a stroke per round with the putter. So just, he's playing better than he should be. He's playing well above his baseline right now. And a lot of times that's a good reason to try and ride some form. So yeah, number 10, it's not like he's a good course fit. It's more so just the form.
Let's go, dude. I'm right in there with you. I've got myself a Sam Burns outright this week. Looking very much forward to a fun week from him. I think he's best fit for these little ranges where you got like 125 to 175. I don't like the long irons for Sam. So we'll see how that works out for him. Big fan of him. And then at a golf course, you got to putt lights out. Let's see what he can do. So also coming off of his first top 10, which hurt me big time this week, but his first top 10 in a major ever, so since the T20 as his best finish, this guy's repping out some really good form right now. I think he's riding it pretty hard. So looking forward to seeing what he can do. We've got the model jumping up all over the place here. Spencer, you've got Russell Henley as your 10th guy.
I have a question for you, Byron, really quickly.
What's up, buddy?
What was the bet that you made with Kenny Kim, and what do you have to eat?
Yep. So I made a bet where it's no longer I have to eat it. I'm going double or nothing now. So, but it's called butterfish. It's like escogar or escalar, and it's like a super oily fish that causes some intestinal discomfort, so to speak. He tried to impress a date one time and ate it, and then just go watch the Fantasy Golf Degenerate show. Kenny, I don't want to bring that into the RotoBaller situation. This is a classy show. That's Kenny's show. We'll let that remain over there. But Yeah, not looking forward to that, but we're running it back. I got Minwoo versus Sam at the Open Championship, so I fancy my chances of squashing that bet. So that's totally cool.
I also think you were, for whatever it's worth, on the right side of that wager. And
I know I was.
Minwoo just never, like, he struggled on Thursday, and then the bet you were looking good at some point, and then Burns kind of turned it on. I don't know. I mean, Burns for me, like, while he's not in the top 10 of my model this week, he is inside of the top 18. Great short course player for me with the returns there. But one of the reasons why I liked Russell Henley is he is the number one player. We've talked a lot about accuracy and wanting players that are accurate. He's the number one player for me over a 2-year running sample size. And you can condense that over just the past year or two, but like number one player for me in driving accuracy. Any of the metrics that you're trying to find there, whether it's the weighted scoring, that really gets propelled for him in his par 4 scoring. Fourth for me in the model, you're going to get 8 holes here that are going to land between 400 to 450 yards. He propels up my sheet in that area. I think this is one of those spots, and I talked about this early in the year with Henley, where the market was very low on him to begin, and we seem to have gotten this correction now to where he's a sub 40-1 golfer in this field. He's $8,600 on DraftKings. He's priced in matchups against players that are right in that range where he's a substantial favorite against them. We had seen this towards the end of last year and the beginning of this year of this form starting to turn around, and it's kind of been hit and miss at portions of this year. But I think he's one of the safest players that you're going to have on the board this week, inside of the top 10 for me, also in safety. I think the upside numbers are where we can have a different discussion with this, just because I have problems getting to the outright total with what we have at this current number. I think it's already baking in a lot of this, but I like Russell Henley a lot for cash games and for matchups and things of that nature.
I've called Russell Henley Sex Panther, Spence, because 60% of the time he's inside the top 20 all the time. And that to me is what that safety brings you. And since he's transformed his whole short game, that's what kind of really kept him going at the US Open. So at a venue like this, touch around the green, lots of putts. Love what's going on there. My guy for number 10 is Seth Aguiar. As Jens asks here in the chat, what do we think about plotters versus bombers? Well, here's Sahith versus Russell Henley, ranked in our top 10 each. I think Sahith's got a bit more distance, a little bit more accuracy as well. He's a good driver of the ball, but I think Sahith's just the putting for me has really got him into this mix. It's definitely not the short game around the greens. It's the putting that's really helping him out there. So he's my guy. I don't have an outright on him this week. I'm very nervous about that. I'm usually on him, but 35-1 was just a little too steep for my liking in this field. I like 50s on Sahith, kind of like a free square. So Luke, you've got Russell Henley. Touch up what Spence has mentioned already.
So, yeah, I was kind of surprised that Henley wasn't higher in my model, because if you could draw up a golf course for him, I mean, this is it right here. Driving accuracy, mid-irons, the guy does that better than most on tour. The issue I think we're going to have is the price tag, the ownership in DFS. If you're trying to get different, he's certainly not going to be different on a week like this. So I think for cash games, that's probably the best place that you could use him. I think somebody down in chat mentioned that he's one of the better cash plays that you can get to. He's got that consistency, that floor that you're hoping for there. So I'm probably not going to have that much exposure, which doesn't feel great, especially because he's such a good course fit, but it just feels like you'd be buying so high on him, whether it's the price tag, ownership, it's all pretty inflated right now.
Yeah, he's very popular and rightfully so, right? So
yeah,
surprisingly, not in my model. So Spence, you've got number 9 is Victor Hovland entering the week.
Look at what Hovland did with this short game last week. That was one of the worst venues that he could have had. I think this is a nice bounce back spot for him. I'm very interested to see where the ownership ends up landing. I'm hoping it's one of those situations where everybody gets disgusted by the performance that he'd given and then gets off of him this week. But third for me in weighted strokes gained total, that put him, like, if I put a little bit extra weight in that area, I could have propelled him much further up the sheet than 9th overall. So to me, this is the GPP sort of target if you're trying to get away from the very chalky routes that are going to be around him higher and lower on the board, where I'm hoping this is going to be one of those sub 15% options that if you throw him in one of those large field MME contests, you can create a little bit of leverage with him.
Absolutely. I think he's a great pivot this week. And I think along with Adam Scott, some great course history here. The guy's a very good wedge player, can make tons and tons of putts. I think he's a fancy option. Just a little shout out to the guys in the chat. We're boycotting Ludwig because my man Millie Goats AK over there, had Ludwig in one of the best lineups I've seen somebody that I know personally in not the millie, but a very big tournament still. And he still won a clean four figures off of a small entry, which was quite fancy. But Ludwig ejecting over the weekend wasn't ideal. And kind of funnily enough, we can chat about him actually once we get into our guys about him. But I'm a big fan of Adam. I think he's going to be a nice DFS option. I don't know how chalky he's going to be, but he tends to kind of find a little bit of steam if people are paying attention to the RotoBaller PGA show. Let's chat about Ludwig now, Luke.
So Ludwig is just an absolute stud. I don't think this is a course that I would really want to target him at because it takes the driver out of hand more than I would like. The guys on a few websites that go through, break down golf courses off the tee, have said that he's probably only going to hit driver 2 or 3 times the entire round. Now, I don't know if I buy that. I think it's going to be closer to like 4 or 5. You'd have to think that he's going to take on some of those drivable par 4s. He probably won't lay back. But somebody at $10,200 this week like Ludwig, you got to love him if you're going to go out there and play him in lineups. So if he's going to come in low owned, kind of like you were saying with Victor Hovland, Spence, I think I would be a buyer on Ludwig Aberg. But I just worry about the driver, right? That's his main weapon. Normally, I like golf courses where guys can lean into their main strength. It's not like the guy isn't a killer when it comes to approach play, around the green play, or putting. He's very stout in all 3 categories. But where he really separates himself, at least in my opinion, would be off the tee. So I got Aberg in my top 10. I think it'd be hard not to put him up there in that top 10, but still maybe not the best track for him.
Yeah, sure. I will, and I don't want to disagree with our guests too much, but respectfully, Luke, if I'm taking a look at strokes gained off the tee on short golf courses, less than 7,200 yards, if you look at RSM Classic, the John Deere Pebble,
yep,
he dials it in. Some of his best rounds have actually, he's like super accurate and super long, like these are the courses I think he can really separate. Also, he's only been on tour for a year, so that's my immediate opinion. Who the heck knows? We need a bit more from this guy, but that's what makes him so unique is there's so much to speak about. So Spence, what do you have to say about Luddy?
Number 1 in my model, stroking off the tee at short courses. Number 1 in weighted total driving. The biggest detriment that I had for him in my model is I think it hurts him ever so slightly. His long iron proximity is more of where my concerns would be with it. Like, he is elite from 175 plus, and you're going to lose a great percentage of that just with the way that this course is built. So the approach numbers would be maybe the one thing. And just he looked on Sunday like he had gone through hell and back. and
for him to look like that is rough, because he's so chilled.
Yeah, that would be my only concern, I guess, would be those 2 things. But my model loved him this week. There's just so many statistical data points that pretty much any course. And that's the thing. We could throw him anywhere in the world and he's going to more or less pop. And some of these young players, we've had this discussion a million times with just Tom Kim when he came up. And I think Oberg now, you get a better indication of what some of these guys are and they aren't. And while Oberg has the distance that's tantalizing at the end of the day, for whatever reason, these club down spots have consistently been better for him.
Yeah, I think that's just the weird thing. And you know what? For a guy that's not necessarily the best wedge player, he scores exceptionally well on these wedge venues, which is, really, really weird, Luke. Like, again, another enigma, like he does so many weird things, but he's so freaking good, man.
I was at that RSM Classic, and I can tell you, I did not expect to see him win that thing. It made me an immediate buyer on his long-term stock because I was like, oh, he's not going to win here. This is Kevin Kisner's land, right? Webb Simpson.
Yes.
Winning the RSM Classic. Not guys like Ludwig. So, yeah, you guys make a lot of fair points there. He's just a stud.
Stewie also said in the chat, which is at least worth mentioning, for somebody who looked like they had everything go against them on Sunday, there's also that injury that comes into play. It's a lot of golf over the past 3 weeks for him. And, who knows how that's going to hold up. And if the ownership starts skyrocketing for him, which the early indications in my model actually seem to make me believe he might be kind of popular. If that's the case, we can have a different discussion on Wednesday and figure out what's the best way to pivot away from that.
Yeah, exactly. We're currently speaking about our favorite options, projecting what we think ownership might be on these guys. At the end of the day, we'll be doing so many more shows. Luke's saying, Luke, how many shows do you do a week?
Like 9. Something like that. Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah.
Luke's got you covered, folks. Please check into his ownership as we're going along. Check into Spencer's, check into mine as we rock and roll through the week. We're going to bring you guys all of our updated opinions, and we really kind of just sharing what we think is going to happen going forward. So, Spence, hit us with your guy who's ranked number 8, and it's Patrick Cantlay.
Cantlay was one of the best leverage spots that I had on the board last week. That ended up coming to fruition, thankfully. And now you're going to get the exact opposite of this, where everybody went from not wanting to play him, and now the entire world is going to want to be on him at a venue that he has found a lot of success at. I mean, look over the last 5 years, 4th in 2023, additional top 15s over the next 4 years there. When I looked in this $9,000 range, outside of Morikawa, there were 2 players that had the upside prerequisites of what I was looking for to be willing to take shots in GPPs. And we'll figure out where the ownership lands to kind of figure out where we want to go with that. But Hovland and Cantlay were 2 of them. Morikawa would be the 3rd. It's just an ownership game at the end of the day with Cantlay.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I'm concerned with the good US Open performance, which he really hasn't shown a lot of major zest lately. And the course history, we can expect him to be one of the highest owned guys. We've got our guys in the chat just saying Tony Finau shows up with a mallet and makes every putt. This is the thing. The guy, I called his current grip like 5-finger death punch. It's just like 5 fingers on the grip and fists elsewhere. It's just a complete monstrosity of a situation with fingers there. But Lord help him and his like arthritis going forward if he continues with that grip. But the ball striking, the tee to green game, golly, this guy's got so much power. He's a fantastic golfer, and he's really starting to trend, right? So I think this is going to be really interesting to see what that putter can get up to. We might see a lot of guys who struggle with the putters moving to these mallets, right? Ever since Rory just ruining things for everybody these days, like giving off trade secrets and things like that. But hey, I'm a big fan of Tony. This week, I don't know, there's tons of people on outrights with him. We'll see. I don't have an outright on Tony Finau, but he's that. So Victor Hovland, number 7 for you there, boss man. Luke?
Yeah, want to just, I guess, honorable mention with Cantlay. He's not in my top 10, but I did bet him outright this week. So I want to say that I have a lot of love there for Cantlay. But yeah, next up, Victor Hovland for me, who is just starting to play a lot better. So a lot of what Spence said a few minutes ago, I think applies here. If we can get him at low ownership, I'm 100% going to be playing a Victor Hovland. His swing, I know it kind of fell apart a little bit there at the US Open, but everyone's going to fall apart at a course like Pinehurst if you're not 100% dialed in. And at a course like this where it's going to be softer, he's going to be able to throw some of those darts. When he's dialed in, he's flying the ball to his proper distances. He sets up more birdie looks than seemingly anyone else on tour. So I don't know if anyone needs to that much of a convincing to want to play somebody like Victor Hovland, but for me, it's going to be all about the ownership. I'm assuming this is just me here early on a Monday kind of guessing what we're going to see with the ownership and who's popular, but I'm going to assume he's close to about 15%. If so, I'll buy that.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, if you take a look at where he's ranked on the DraftKings slate versus where you two have him, I don't even have him in my top 10. So I would imagine people and optimizers aren't going to be going to him because of that. Also, Luke, you're the star of the show tonight. Tell us why you like Patrick Cantlay, even though he's not in your top 10.
Yeah, so Patrick Cantlay, for me, I'm liking the form and how he's trending. And then the course history is unbelievable. If you take a look at his last 5 starts at this course, he has nothing worse than a T15. He's gone T15, T11, 2 T13s in a row, and then had his best performance last year with the T4. So that hasn't won. I guess that's a perfectly reasonable gripe with taking him for an outright, but I like riding the hot hand with Cantlay. That's kind of my thing with them, which it's not optimal for ownership. He's definitely going to be a little bit more popular than I hope, but maybe it's optimistic. I'm hoping he's like 15% too. I say that about a lot of guys and then end up being wrong. So luckily we can adapt Wednesday.
Hey, but you've got the outright, so you've got the highest upside invested for him. I'm still trying to get the puke out of my back of my hair from the Patrick Cantlay rides I've been on, but I'll let you do that. Spencer, your number 7 ranked golfer is Brian Harman. We've had a lot of people calling for the Hobbit in the chat. Here he is.
If you look at this board and whether I think Cantlay is going to be very popular. Like I have a bad feeling he's going to approach 20 to 30%, wherever that number ends up landing in there, probably on the lower end of it. But, you get these no-cut, limited field contests. And one of the things as a space, and I do think that partially what ends up happening is there's so much more content that's being put out, like whether it's your content, Byron, Luke's content, my content, the countless other people out there that release information. We are so much better as an industry than we were probably 5 years ago. And a lot of people run things in a similar fashion. I do think mine's a little bit different from just going from a longer extended duration of time, trying to get away from all the common answers that are going to be given for a week. But you look at a lot of these names, whether it's Harman, or you can even put up, Byron, if you want, Keegan Bradley, who's 6 for me. And I probably prefer Brian Harman myself if I'm going to try to compare the two together. But this is where all the ownership's going to land. There's course history there. There's the statistical fit for why they make sense. I'm not looking to play every single one of these players. One of the things I put out in my model every single week is how they're priced against the market. And I think that's the important thing when you put out a model. And one of the things I at least want to mention on here, a model is not trying to predict from 1 to 71 the exact order that players are going to finish. A model is being put out there to try to figure out, how do you rank players compared to other players? Where are your values on that player compared to the market? Where is there leverage that can be created? Where's the market higher than you? These are all the questions that are the most important throughout the week. And I think a lot of times people see a model and you have Scottie Scheffler number 1, and then Scottie Scheffler comes 41st. Well, if you're building a model where Scottie Scheffler is not number 1 at the US Open last week, or at least in the top 2, I'll give you that. But you're making a mistake somewhere in the build. We're not trying to exactly predict the leaderboard. We're trying to figure out where we have advantages. So, the first step of the equation is based off of the price. If we're talking specifically DraftKings here or inside the betting market, where do we have value compared to the market? And then the second part of this equation that comes into play, we get more of an indication on Tuesday and Wednesday of where are we compared to public consensus and ownership. You throw all of that together, you figure out where you're higher and lower than the market. That's how you build your player pool. But I can promise you this Keegan, Harman, Cantlay, Henley, we're going to have to make decisions there. This is not just some clear-cut thing of throw them all in a 71-man field.
Yeah, and I can see Sam Burns definitely coming along and joining that gang with some ownership too, because he's been playing some good golf. So we're going to have to dance around this ownership. I've got Max Homa sitting 7th. I'll be honest, I'll just be betting this guy top 20. I haven't really checked out the odds, but that's just what he's been doing. He's just been repping out top 20 finishes. His upside seems very limited since he's been a dad. For some weird reason, I don't know why that's the case, but you've got another alien in the world now that you're in control of, and that can sometimes take the edge or the mental edge off of you that you needed in order to succeed in a golf tournament. So Hideki Matsuyama, number 6 there for you. I had him as the only option without an each way last week, and I did 5 places. Thank God for Mathieu Pavon. Otherwise, I would be on absolute tatters right now, because had the only person that finished inside the each way market for me been Hideki and I didn't have one, and I had the top 30 only, I would have been crying. So, Lukey, hit me with what's cooking over here for Dexter.
It sounds like a good commercial for going out there and playing each ways, making sure to do that. But yeah, I like Hideki Matsuyama's form. I mean, how couldn't you like it with how sustainable he's been, gaining in all 4 stat categories lately? Really, you could put him on any golf course, and I think he'd model well. It's kind of like Xander, right? You put Xander Schauffele into any model that you're running, it's going to be hard for him not to be top 5. So I think Hideki Matsuyama is really just playing some quality golf. And I don't know if he's going to win this sort of golf tournament. I worry about him getting to 20 under par. I normally like playing Hideki for outrights at courses that are more difficult. So last week at the US Open, I think that was a fantastic spot to get an outright in each way on somebody like Hideki. This week, maybe he's more of a DFS play for me.
Yes, I totally agree. And I don't even have him in my top 10 because I do include a few easy course scoring conditions in my model, and I think he definitely takes a hit when that happens. So Spence, hit us with why he's your 5th guy.
Better cash game play for me than an upside target. I would rather play Patrick Cantlay or Hovland if I'm placing an outright ticket or if I'm shooting for the, stars in a large field contest. I think for Byron, let me ask you this. Where do you have Hideki in your sheet?
Oh God. I'm going to have to divulge some. Oh, it's on the other screen. That's good. I've got Hideki sitting all the way. So his safety ranking is 7th. His upside ranking is 14th for me. I feel like that's a perfect profile for Hideki.
So 5th overall for me, upside ranking of 15th, safety ranking of 4th. We essentially have the same output, just change the numbers by a little bit. That's what you're looking at with Hideki. And my concerns with Hideki are always when we get into this popular zone with him, when he's over $9,000 and you're at a course where you have to make birdies. Those three things together have never really warranted ownership that is what it should be in these events. It just ends up being a little bit too much. For that reason, I'm probably going to be out on him in anything that I'm looking for upside.
Yeah. And just by the way, speaking of safety, the last miscut in a major for Hideki Matsuyama was 2018. Would you believe that? Like, this guy has just been a model of consistency. Those Japanese people demand 4 rounds of major golf, and he goddamn gives it to them. So congrats to him on doing that for the people. Those Lexus sponsorships really paying dividends. This is my upside rankings that I have in the model here because it's DFS. I'm not looking that much for safety in a kind of a no-cut situation. So Wyndham Clark for me, when I'm taking 75th percentile numbers of strokes gained, he's going to show up because his upside is way the hell up there. So I think he's my kind of guy. But hey, I'm monitoring the ownership because I do not trust a single thing about this guy's game right now. We'll see. Spence, you the Wyndham Clark whisperer. What's going on?
The very first outright ticket that I punched this week was Wyndham Clark at 70-1. When we're looking specifically for DraftKings here, we keep talking about all these players that are going to be popular. You're going to have to find a name, whether it's a Wyndham Clark. You mentioned Max Homa also. I'm not necessarily on Homa myself, but it's those sort of players that are going to be sub 10% that have legitimate upside and profiles to them that are going to go under the radar. That is what I'm looking for. We can make an argument with a lot of these options that their price tags might be a little bit too high, but they have upsides in the profiles. And then they also have the leverage that can get created on the back end of it. Just because you're too expensive doesn't mean you're unplayable. The bad combination is when everybody's playing you in spots and then you're not creating leverage. I would so much rather find a guy, and Wyndham Clark for me, when I ran it for upside, jumped to 11th overall for me. So we're looking at a player that high ceiling, low floor. That is what I'm trying to attack over and over again. I'm not telling anybody out there he's not going to come bottom 5 of this tournament and implode your lineups and do everything the wrong way. But I made this argument, Byron, a couple weeks ago, and I've said it quite a few times on this show. People play DFS way too cautiously. There is such a large amount of rake that goes into these builds, and everybody wants to talk about that they've min-cashed the tournament and they're playing 70% Scottie Scheffler, and that's great and all. But when you can have those 1 or 2 big scores throughout a season, that more and triple and quadruples pays for anything else that you're trying to do. So if you're min-cashing every single tournament, you're going to min-cash your bankroll away.
Exactly. You need to have 100 DFS slates in your bankroll in order to play DFS. The last 100th one is the one that's going to get you right back into the mix, so you got to be able to survive the depths of the despair. And speaking of depths of the despair, we have got ourselves a Tony Finau over here. Yeah. So apologies on that. I wasn't quite paying attention to the name.
All good. Yeah, I'm curious where you guys think the ownership's going to come in on Big Tony, because he's playing sneakily some of the best golf in the world right now, gaining over 1.25 shots gained per round approach over his last 12. He's even gaining with the flat stick lately. So it's like bizarre world out there for Tony. He went from changing up the putting grip, changing up the putter week to week to now having a legit plus putter, which if he's going to continue to do that, he's likely going to win a golf tournament here. Now, am I expecting that to hold up? Maybe not so much. I mean, we have a track record of him falling off rather quickly, but when he's on this ascent, it makes him very attractive no matter which way you're going to model him, especially some of the short-term stuff. And at a birdie fest like this, historically, I wouldn't be a huge Tony Finau guy, kind of like a Hideki Matsuyama. Normally, their upside is capped. However, with the flat stick cooperating, I think it gives them a little bit more upside than most here.
It does. And that's the crazy thing. And I think everyone's going to gravitate to what they saw at the US Open. And something I do want to mention heading into the Travelers, we've gone Memorial, we've gone the US Open. What? The winning score totals were 11 under par. I can't remember what the Memorial was. Like, we are playing these golf courses that are a very difficult and unique set of golf. This week, we're going to have -20 score, and I think that completely changes the whole dynamic. And I think people are going to get lured into some golfers that have shown some good form with the long irons, with bogey avoidance. This week is a totally different ball game. I'm cool fading guys that have shown some really good form that might not translate to this kind of an environment. So
well, Byron,
sorry.
It just really quickly, it comes down to what we keep talking about too. It's the over corrections and the overreactions to the market. That is something that I do every single night when I give my in-tournament head-to-head bets out. You get these massive shifts that occur that are just so much. And I don't think, for the record, I like Finau this week. To answer Luke's question, he probably lands somewhere. I'm not going to give an exact percentage. He's probably a top 11 or 12 owned guy, wherever that exactly places him. That seems perfectly fair for me. It doesn't take much for me to get on the Finau train. I have been tipping and touting Finau for what feels like the entire year, waiting for this putter to finally turn around, and we might be in the spot where he can put everything into one place. He was the name that just missed for me. He was 11th in my model. I think he's perfectly fine to consider, but there are a lot of golfers, and we saw it with Hadwin at the Memorial, and then all of a sudden he's overpriced in head-to-head matchups, and there was potential against, like, I took Bezaden out over him. There's always going to be these overcorrections in the market that just shift everything of what it should be. And that's, depending on the amount of time that you're running it, that's going to be exactly how much of an edge you have. But that would be one of the things I would be very cautious of just on a weekly basis, is try not to be the person that overreacts to one good tournament, because once the sports books know about it and once the general public starts knowing about it, you've lost all the value. The price tag has been heightened into a range that's further than it should be. The outright number shrinks. He's placed in matchups in territories where he shouldn't be at that moment. Those are the simple ways to avoid the traps that end up luring everybody in every single week.
Guys, if you are watching this on replay, please go back 2 minutes. Listen to what Spencer just said. It's very, very important. I think you're always going to find amazing information on the show. Spencer's always bringing you stuff that thinking outside the box, thinking about ways to get different and how to avoid getting played like a fool, because that's what the sports books are out here to do. We're here to educate you and try and protect you from Cirque du Soleil, So we're going to go there and hit number 4 with old Lukester, and he's Corey Connors.
Yeah, so I'm kind of curious to know if you guys have him in your top 4 or not. I'm guessing you don't, just based on his price tag and all of that. My model loves Corey Connors this week. He's by far the biggest misprice when looking at my model based on the pricing. And I'm going to have to get exposure if that's the case. So I'm curious to see if you have him up there towards the top or not. But for me, he's the quintessential course fit. He's got the driving accuracy we're looking for. Mid irons, he checks the 125 to 150, also 150 to 175. He's top 25 in both of those proximity buckets. And though he doesn't have the best putter, he reminds me a lot of the Tony Finau Hideki plays. The ball striking floor is among the best that we have in the field. But with Corey Connors, you wonder if he's going to make enough putts to get to 15 or 20 under par. So he's not the sort of player that I'm going to bet outright. He did finish top 10 here last year. A top 10 at $8,400 pays off in DFS. So that's more so what I'm hoping for Corey. If I'm going to bet him for any sort of outright market, I think top 10, top 20 would make sense. Top 20, because of how consistent he is probably the best number or best market to go out there and target him. I guess it just comes down to what kind of value we can get from the sports books.
His T20 market is legit the best market to target him in, Luke, and it is a little unprofitable at the current moment for the last 12 months, but he's really starting to trend in the right direction. And I think, that like you mentioned, $8,400 is $4,100 less. You got $1,900 to get to the min price golfer between the two differences in prices there between, I know we're comparing Scottie to Corey, yeah, but you get the point. $4,100, it's a big difference, and you're going to deal with those warts accordingly. So I'm totally cool with that situation there. Spence, you and I both have our guy, Colin Morikawa, ranked number 4, which matches the DK pricing over here. Hit me.
Morikawa is trending in all the areas of his game that he had struggled in for so long. And that even includes some of the proximity numbers, surprisingly. We've talked about this on the show this year, that what Morikawa was with his long iron proximity had vanished all of a sudden at the beginning of this year. And we've seen all of that turn around. He's not going to necessarily have all the long iron proximity this week with all those shots that are coming in from 175 and within. Morikawa is going to win something soon. I don't know if that's this tournament. I don't have an outright on him this week. I don't know if it's this tournament. I don't know if that's the Open Championship. This is a legitimate golfer that is trending in the right direction with all the metrics that you want to see. And when that ends up transpiring, the pieces always get put together at some moment. And this feels like a nice course fit for him. So I have him 4th. And then just very quickly on the Corey Conners discussion, I guess I misspoke on Finau. Finau's 12th for me. He's 11th for upside. Corey Conners is 11th. So he is the first name that missed. But the one thing I want to say about Conners, we can talk about the putter and how he doesn't make putts. That's going to be the common answer that everybody's going to give. I ran something in my model. This is just like the basic explanation of it. It's essentially expected total driving geared specifically for this course, and then taking the primary proximity zones that you're going to get and merging those two categories into one expectation of how you're going to be able to take on this property compared to the field. Corey Conners for me, 2nd overall in that category. Really, if I remove putting from the mix, he would skyrocket for me. And that's something that maybe I'll have to go back and do to see what happens when I remove the putter. But this probably would have been a top 5 or 6 play 100% if the putter was not put in for my weighted strokes gain total for 30% of that area.
Yeah. It's exactly that. And the thing is, like, you can take any amateur golfer and make him hit a putt. I think there's a good chance it goes in, more so than taking any amateur golfer and making him hit a 175-yard approach. Like the luck fact, like the fact that you just have to putt it, like it's so easy to hit, versus having to hit it 175 yards. So I've got a Colin Morikawa 16-1. I popped in the Discord this morning. I'm the closing line value run-up king, and he's sitting at 12-1 right now after the Rory WD. He's going to win a tournament. Spencer told me so. It's happening this week. Let's party, baby. Let's party. So I can't wait for Colin to win this tournament this week at 16-1. You've got him 3rd. Hit us,
add me to the list of people with Colin Morikawa outright. Now, 16-1, I wish I got that number. I got 13-1. Only one book available down here in Florida, unfortunately.
Yes.
Hard Rock Bet, unless we won't say it. But yeah, 13-1 for the legal sports book down here. But yeah, took him at that number. It's not the best. It's not the 14-1 that I saw a few other people getting. But the guy's due for a win. I hate to say that, but if anyone has the stat profile, somebody that's due to pop off and win, it's Colin Morikawa. Guy has been in the mix time and time again. Around the green play used to be a huge hole for him, and now it's seemingly a strength. Putter has become a lot more consistent. I mean, he's not always gaining a bunch of strokes, but every 1 of 3 events, he's seemingly going out there and gaining 4 or 5 strokes. It's a very, very attractive stat profile. And just like a Corey Conners, a Russell Henley, he's the quintessential course fit here. So I'm a huge buyer on him, and add me to the list of people that think he's going to win this week.
I know. The heartbreak is imminent and looms large, but hey, this is what you sign up. I've got the 5 places. We'll deal with it that way. I love the fact that the long irons are out of the equation essentially this week while he's still working on getting those dialed in. The short irons are golden. The short game going to come in hot. You two have got the same golfer, I believe, ranked number 2. He's not the number 2 ranked golfer in the world. He's the number 1. You two have Scottie Scheffler. Luke, what's going on over there?
Yeah, so that should be a surprise to everyone out there. When I saw Scottie was at number 1, I was surprised with my own modeling out there. It's more so, I think, a statement about how good the number 1 golfer ranks for this golf course. A lot of it comes down to agronomy. That's really where I think he separates himself from Scottie Scheffler. Potentially the bum performance at the US Open is holding him back just a little bit. But if we look at my projected fantasy points, if you take a look at all of that projected top 5 rate, all of that, Scottie's still the number 1 golfer in the world. So I hate to say that he's my number 2 guy there, but there's a good reason for it when we talk about our next ranking.
Hey, there's modeling for a reason, and we trying to find an edge here. So if you think that Xander this week has a reason to be played, Spencer, tell the people why that's going to happen.
All the upside numbers of my model, and Luke just explained that very well. Like, same thing for me. They're all going to push towards Scottie Scheffler being the number 1 golfer, and he cracks number 1 for me in GPP upside. When we look at strokes gain total over a 2-year running duration of time, and I made this argument, whether it was with you last week, Byron, I went on a show with Pat Mayo. I made this argument with him. I pretty much gave this narrative over and over and over again. There are 3 players on the PGA Tour that have separated themselves from everybody else. Scottie Scheffler, 2.54 strokes gain total over a 2-year running perspective. Xander, 2.10. I ended up eliminating Rory from my sheet. I want to say Rory is 1.9 something, but it's those 3. And then you have Oberg 1.40, Colin Morikawa 1.35, Hideki, Cantlay, Finau, Fleetwood, Clark, Hovland, Henley. Like, those are all the names that surpass 1, with a couple other included with Theegala, Homa. That's the entire range that's going to give you 1 or more. I have lived under this mentality all of 2024 here, that Xander's lack of perceived win equity in the market continues to push us into this range, whether it's for DFS contests or inside of the betting board, where the market is lower on him than it should be. I ended up betting him at 8-1. I usually don't go this low down on the board. That's the one reason why I didn't end up with the Colin Morikawa ticket, is because I decided to be very aggressive and bet Xander Schauffele. It's very important to note, and Luke talked about the agronomy and everything with that, not all courses are built the same. There are certain venues that will accentuate strengths and weaknesses of players. Scottie, in my expected strokes gain total for this course, did get hurt quite heavily by the putter. Xander ended up grading number 1 overall for me in that category. That was enough for him to propel himself just past Scottie from an overall rank. The upside, yes, it's a different answer. Scottie's the favorite to win this tournament, but I think we're in a spot here where, because everybody has this preconceived notion of Xander that you add an extra win to him, you're starting to see how this strokes gain total and all these stats are much closer between Scottie and Xander than the public seems to believe. Xander's going to, in my opinion, win something else, and potentially something very big at some point this year. It's kind of the same answer I gave about Colin, Byron. And, you know, that's one of the reasons why that 16-1 price that you got, and even the 13-1 number with Rory being out of the field, I think those are very enticing routes to consider. But it's whether it's here, it's at the Open, it's at one of these tournaments. I think Xander's about to pop again. And if you would just have added 1 win, give him the Players' Championship and see what this outright number would have opened at, I can promise you it wouldn't have been this price.
Absolutely, dude. And if you think about what the hell he got up to at this US Open, he lost 3.5 strokes in his first 7 holes on Saturday or Sunday. And he also hit one out of bounds, like on this golf course. You know, like he did some of the most bizarre things and still finished inside the top 10. Thank God, because it's the only 40-1 ticket I might hit this year is a top 10 on Xan in all 4 majors. You know, like, I think this is the world we're living in, and his floor is like touching the ceiling right now, and it's incredible. It's really, really impressive stuff. If
we want to talk about Bryson catching every lucky break throughout the tournament, I thought Xander ran the opposite of that. Yes. There were about 3 or 4 shots that he hit that on any other course, he would have stuck to 3 or 4 feet. And just with the nature of that course, the ball didn't hold the green. It rolled back 30 or 40 yards, and he ended up producing a bogey in a lot of those spots. He was much closer to win that golf tournament than people believe with it. And that was one of the things that I talked about on Friday night when I ran my expected win equity moving forward with it. And there were 5 players that were substantially above everybody else. 4 of those names stayed in the mix, including Oberg in that for quite a bit of time with Cantlay, Rory, and Bryson. The one name that took himself out of it early on Saturday was Xander. But because Xander did that, it puts us in a very nice spot here to be able to go back to him. And I think he's going to be popular. I don't think we're getting an ownership discount on him.
No.
I also don't really care in this spot. This is just one of those situations where I'm going to be higher than the market and I'm going to aggressively play him in DFS contests. And I talked about the outright, which just goes to that.
Exactly, dude. And that's the thing is there's certain guys, but the fun part is I thought Scottie Scheffler was that dude that was a can't miss play last week. And all my lineups sitting on the left-hand side of my screen beg to differ for the US Open. But, you got to take your stance. And as long as you're over the market and over what the weighting of the field is, you're looking good. So that is it for the top 10 rankings. Let's dive through some guys in the other tiers, because the majority of our guys we've ranked are not going to find themselves in the top of the board. Gourmet or cray-cray, let's start in the 8K range here, just for some poops and giggles. So your favorite play, Luke, in the 8K range, gourmet or cray-cray?
Favorite play for me is Corey Connor. So he actually was on my top 10 rankings, which is surprising that we'd get one of these guys up there in the top 10. But yeah, he's just fits the golf course perfectly. That off the tee play, those proximity buckets, he checks for me. So yeah, definitely Corey Connors.
Spence, gourmet, cray-cray, 8K range.
Probably Harman or Connors. Ownership's going to dictate which direction that goes. Cray-cray, I will say... Here's the answer that I'll give about Jordan Spieth. Jordan Spieth's ball striking is starting to turn around. I don't think this is the venue for him. We're getting close. Maybe the Open Championship ends up being one of those tournaments where we get that coming out party for him again. I talked a lot about looking for players in my model that were over and underachieving their baseline. And one of the ways, as anybody who listens to the show knows of how I do it, is I'll take the actual ball striking statistics and then I'll blend that in with the baseline around the green and putting stats that I have for that player, just to recalibrate and give us a reprojected leaderboard. Scottie Scheffler, Jordan Spieth, Tommy Fleetwood. Those three guys after every single day should have been far exceeding what we were getting from them. I do believe Spieth is about to turn it around. And I guess that's a weird answer to give because I don't think anybody's going to play Spieth this week. So I don't want to say if you want to take a shot, go for it type of deal. But there were just some problems in my model specifically for this tournament. But I think we're getting very close for him potentially hitting again.
Yeah. I've always said you ride the Spieth roller coaster alone or you don't ride it at all, because when you throw up on yourself, you only want to throw up on yourself. Don't let other people throw up on you too, because that's what the Spieth roller coaster is all about. Also coming from last week where it's a bit more tight lies, less resistance unless you're in the weed grass. I feel like his wrist injury, not as big of a deal at those kind of venues. This week with the thick, luscious stuff, hacking it out of there. Granted, his drive has just been exceptional, so he's likely going to be from the fairway for the most part. But the magic we've seen from Spieth in the short game department overall has been missing lately. If that shows up, the ball striking is ready to party, man. So yeah. I'm totally in agreement with you there, Spence. I love Tom Kim this week. This dude heading into round 4 was lapping the field on approach and then just kind of imploded very sadly on Sunday. But this dude is young. He's hung. He's ready to do his thing. And I'm ready to party with Tom Kim, man. He's $8,100. This guy's won multiple times on these short courses, Sedgefield, TPC Summerlin, 3 times over there. And mind you, he's turning 22 only later this month. So Tom Kim is my cray-cray price at $8,100, which a good cray-cray, if that makes any sense there. For me, yeah.
No, I continue your thought, Byron. I'll get back to the Tom Kim thing at the end.
Spencer, I actually didn't know where I was going to go. I was busy trying to find a name that I could cling on to there. So go ahead and hit me with your Tom Kim stuff.
So normally I don't have this many players that are a DraftKings value in the $8,000 section. You're going to get a couple names that are going to fall further down the board. It's just the nature of the game here. And you get a limited field contest and you're going to have some players that are going to be a value. I had 5 golfers for me that were a value in this $8,000 range. It's going to be 5 very popular golfers. And that's where I keep going back to where you have to make a decision. But Keegan Bradley, Russell Henley, Corey Connors, Brian Harman, Tom Kim. All of those guys should have been more expensive. And really that takes over for a lot of these golfers in that low $9,000 range where I would have swapped those names to make it work with it. But I thought there was a lot of really interesting values to be had in that $8,000 range. But the problem with that answer being given is I'm not the only person that thinks that. I see that right now with the projected ownership. All 5 of those guys probably land inside the top 20 owned players. So it's just something to keep in mind as you construct the lineup, to where you're going to have to figure out a way to differentiate a build if you use too many of them together.
I forgot to sneak in my cray, but mine was Jordan Spieth too. So just to, I guess, circle back on that. And I'm a huge Jordan Spieth guy. I'm like the biggest Jordan Spieth truther there is. I bet this guy almost every single time that he plays, and I'm worried about him. He's doing things well that he doesn't typically do well, like the off the tee play, for example. Putter's been a little bit hit or miss this year, but surprisingly enough, his short game around the green play has been a little bit off, which at this course, I don't worry about as much. More of a birdie fest, more so worried about the putter than anything with him. I think that when he figures it out, that he might be a better player than he was before. If he truly found something off the tee and he can get back to what he was used to doing, he's got, I think, more upside now than what he had before, but not in this current state. So that's why he's my cray.
Luke, you spot on, man. Like, that's the thing. Like, Masters winning Jordan Spieth I don't know if he was driving the ball this well. Like, this is some sensational driving, and it's this dad strength that he's just got. You pop out 2 little cherubs, and the next thing you're just nuking things off the tee. And I think his answer to extra distance was, I'm just hitting it harder, which that was an answer like 2 years ago. Maybe he's been working out a bit more, but like, he just showed up out of nowhere, just started nuking it, and yeah, we are. So, this is the thing. Maybe us 3 can ride the Jordan. I'll throw up on the 2 of you, and I'll let you 2 throw up on me as well. We can all do this together if we're in the mood, but we all have to have a pact that it's okay. So we'll see how that cooks over there. In the 7s, boys, Spencer, hit me with your cray and gourmet options in the 7K ranges.
The volatile route for gourmet would be the Wyndham Clark discussion that we had. That's the boomer bust potential of if you're really shooting for the moon with it. But the safer option that I'm going to give, and you're going to get a price reduction on him also, do think he'll be a little bit popular, is JT Poston at 7,300. There were 10 golfers for me. I ran 7 main categories this week. They encompass a lot of different data that fit into that build there. But there were 7 categories that I ran, and I took the top 30 golfers from each one of those categories, and anybody that didn't land in the top 30 got removed from the sheet. So there were 10 players that landed in that range. The worst player outside of JT Poston, and this is just on a price scale answer of it, was Corey Connors at 8,400. JT Poston was the only player that was not 8,400 or above that landed on that sheet. That's pretty much everybody that I've talked about that's inside of the top 10 of my model for the most part this week. Outside with Finau. Finau would be, I believe, the lone exception to that answer, but Poston for me is a name that I bet him at 100 to 1. I don't know if he actually has the win equity to take down this tournament. My model seemed to think so because he had the positive trajectory for upside, but there were a lot of statistics inside of my sheet that I really liked him for this course.
Yeah. The chat is going nuts with the throw up gifts in there. So shout out to you guys. By the way, this chat has been amazing. So Luke, you've brought, I didn't recognize too many other folks in here, but there are some serious names that are showing up in the chat here, and they are puking all over the place over there. So you guys clean up the chat, okay? You leave it how you found it, please. We don't want that place dirty. It's only dirty on the show over here. Big fan of the JT Poston call there. Lukey, what's going on with you over there in the 7s?
Yeah, so in the 7s, my gourmet option is Sepp Straka. So might as well call him the Diet Coke play of the week, whatever we want to call him here with Sepp Straka. But if you look at my comp courses this week, he is unbelievable at the comp courses. It's where almost all of his top finishes come through. So I'm looking at TPC Southwind. He lost in a playoff to Will Zalatoris there a few years ago. Also has had a few other top finishes there. Short par 70, water in play. A lot of similarities to what we have this week. Cognizant Classic, Honda Classic, of course, won there. Also another top 5 finish, another top 10 finish on top of that. So another checked box there. Just another, it's more positional off the tee. You have some layups around that golf course, which is another parallel to this week. Also a lot of water in play, which you could say that about Highlands on the back 9. And then also John Deere, he's played well there. He had that one Sunday where he almost went out there and stole the damn thing. And then just in general, off the tee play, one of the most accurate players on tour this year. He's number 2 in driving accuracy. And if you look at the proximity buckets, 125 to 150, 150 to 175, kind of like Corey Connors, he just fits the course. I don't know what it is about Russell Henley, Corey Connors, Sepp Straka. Who else can we say this about? There are a few other guys. They all have the same exact skill set. They are accurate off the tee. They hit the same sort of iron shots well. They're usually hit or miss putters as well. And I like all those guys this week.
It's all guys who refused to get out of the 2019, 2017 era of golf before distance became paramount, But you know what? For Sepp, big boy, you should be able to swing like me, cuz, but also I'm not that good of an iron, but whatever. I'm just saying, like, you see guys like this, Brendan Todd, 6'4", 164 mile per hour ball speed. Like, what are we doing? Like, I don't understand. Some people just refuse to really let the game's analytics come to them, but they also lean into what they do best and stick with that. These are PGA Tour professionals. Repetition is what got them to the situation they're in. And you know what? Who are we to really tell them what's up? But we are also experts at this stuff, analytics and stuff.
Sepp Straka last week at the U.S. Open was my fade of the week. And that wasn't just an answer because of the price tag that he was. I made a note that I thought that was a fair price for him. And that's kind of what we ended up getting at the end of the day. Look at the ball striking that he put together, though. 5.4 strokes off the tee plus approach. He lost 5.2 with his around the green game. That was my exact concern of what would happen with his around the green game. I thought it was going to be worse than that because some of those long iron proximities were the worst portion of his game. I was afraid he was going to miss a bunch of greens in regulation. He was going to have problems getting up and down, and he was going to miss the cut. That did not end up happening, at least to that level that I thought it was going to. When he missed the green in regulation, he imploded on himself. This is a much better spot for him. The ball striking remained from last week. I'm back into him being a top 20 sort of a play for this tournament. It's an interesting price here at 7,900 for arguably maybe the hottest golfer in the world outside of this 8,000 and up range that we're going to actually get a potential on. Like, I can go on and on about how much I like Wyndham Clark's upside to take down this tournament. But if you compare him to what Sepp Straka is doing, Straka is actually producing at this moment. So I have no issues with anybody who wants to go to Straka this week. This is not the same fade spot that I thought of last week.
You are just preaching to the beautiful choir of you, Spence. I'm a big fan of Sepp. Had me my farewell fiver on, I think it was Friday or Saturday. And he took a triple after hitting the flag. Like, if that just lands next to the flag, it's a birdie or a par. That's a 3-shot swing, landed up being the only person that lost by 1 shot. Like, just incredible stuff, like how unlucky is it that you hit a flag and take a triple? Like, granted, he absolutely nuked he's around like that bunker shot was atrocious, but I don't even know what the lie was because the ball like rolled in from off the green into that lie. It's a very awkward situation. Big fan of Sepp. Bezzy is my guy in this range. Golly, this dude has been hitting his irons so well. We can see him really dial in on the putting surfaces. If we get some bent greens, that's what we're rocking and rolling back home. So Bezzy in this range, $7,400. If we're getting the irons, if we're getting the accuracy off the tee, let's party with him. Big fan of his situation. In the sixes, boys, as we wrap it up over here, we've had lots of guys talking about Brendan Todd. We've got some other options in this range. Luke, hit us with your gourmet and cray-cray options in the sixes.
So gourmet option for me is Victor Perez, $6,500. And he actually models as my number 13th ranked play this week. So he's one of those guys like Corey that's popping way more than they probably should. Part of that's the form. You take a look at the last 12 measured rounds. That guy is playing like a 8K golfer, let alone somebody down here in that 6K range. And he played well at courses that are pretty comparable to what we're going to get this week. So if we take a look at his form, where is he at? $6,500 here. I'm on the wrong tab. Okay, that would help out here with doing this live. So he went T12, T3 at 2 courses that are relatively short or rely on driving accuracy. I don't know if I call Memorial short, but much more of a driving accuracy course than distance, in my opinion. And then the RBC Canadian, of course, I think very comparable to the conditions that we're going to get this week. And he nearly won that golf tournament. So I think that the price is way off. He should probably be like $7,400. I don't think he's an 8K golfer by any means, but still should probably be in the 7K range. And then for Cray, I'm not sure if anyone's really mispriced because they're like in the 6K range. If we want to do it Cray in like the opposite fashion, like they should be more expensive. Maybe Ben Griffin based on his form at $6,800. I guess at Davis Riley, you could say that his form's been solid. I don't think he's a good course fit here, but based at $6,200 price tag seems pretty crazy to me.
Yeah, dude. This range is entirely filled with really good options to really break the slate with you. And trying to navigate these guys is going to be imperative because with Scottie, with Xander at the 11-12, 12-5, 11-2, you're going to have to, there's going to be people rostering both of those dudes potentially, you know, and potentially 2 6K guys. So it's going to be important to find your dudes. Ben Griffin's very interesting, man. If you comp courses, this guy's popping pretty hard for me in that range. So Spencer, what's cooking with you in the 6K range for Cray and Gourmet?
For me, Cray will come down to ownership. It's hard to call anybody Cray in a 71-man field where we don't know where the ownership lands right now. So, we'll see where that trends over the next couple days. There are 3 golfers, or the 3 golfers, I'll name who they are, that are the best values for me on the board. And we'll do this from the $7,000 range and just top 30 golfers and down here. JT Poston would be the best value that I have on the board. The second best value I have on the board would be Justin Rose, which is going to be my answer for Gourmet at 6,900. And then Byron, I don't know why we keep falling into this trap with Adam Scott. Adam Scott is a value for me every single weekend. I can't seem to get away from it, but I like Adam Scott here. When we look at Justin Rose, so you're going to have the back-to-back miscuts. To me, the simple solution to this is at the Memorial, that was all undone by a poor Thursday. He got it together on Friday. It was just too little too late. Then you look at the US Open and he misses the cut, but he misses it by 1 shot. He grades inside the top 50 for me in projected scoring after 2 rounds. When I go back to this baseline statistics that I'm talking about of adding in the putter and the around the green game, he was inside the top 25 for me in expected total driving plus primary proximity zones. I thought he was one of the better values to consider here, where this recent form or the lack of recent form that he's bringing to the mix is one of the reasons why he's priced as low as he is. It's a very similar answer that I would give for Adam Scott. These are 2 names that always seem to pop up on my model. And, there's not been a lot of results this year where I have felt super comfortable with backing them. But at 6,900, I am more than willing to take a shot in this field.
Yeah, you got to. It's a 71-man field. Ownership's going to be pretty high for everybody. So trying to find a sub 5% option is going to be key. I think you can find a reliable guy in that range is going to be very important. My Gourmet is Mathieu Pavon. I feel like this guy, whenever he starts firing, the Farmers Insurance and then Pebble Beach, this guy just did his thing. Maybe his game's back, and at $6,800, we know that this guy was hanging around in the final group of a US Open. He showed up on tour this year from the DP World Tour. Like, talk about an meteoric rise to stardom from a no-name. Like he was in my KFT guys article. I didn't even know who he was. So crazy to see him doing his thing. The guys in the chat, Millie, talking about Lucas Glover. Talking about a ball striking beast who cannot putt. That is your guy. Like even with the broomstick, he's just sweeping up nothing at the moment. So tough scenes for him over there. But I'm also going to mention Seamus Power, boys. At a golf course like this, short positional venue, if this thing was being played in Bermuda, he'd be like 75% owned. I'm just kidding, but you know what I'm saying. Like this is where he thrives. And I think big Seamus fan. I think he's going to knock around some serious lumber this week and looking forward to seeing what he can do. We also had someone mention about Davis Riley not showing up at the US Open. He literally won the Charles Schwab. Did that not get him in, or where the hell was he?
Yeah, that's a good point. Where was he?
Like,
maybe he didn't get in for winning that event. Maybe it wasn't one of those automatic qualifiers.
I don't know exactly what the rules are for these things, but I know that these second-tiered events in a couple spots have been not getting certain players. I don't know if Gotterup.
I think he did play too.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's just been, I don't know. There's just been like weird things of players not getting in for certain reasons of stuff. Like you're qualified for elevated, you're winning events in some things, and you're just not getting in elsewhere. So I'm not sure.
Yeah. Like how is Minwoo Lee not getting into signature events?
He didn't start off the year very well, and by very well, wasn't playing a lot of golf either.
Yeah.
You know, like at venues, like I get these things wrong so often. Like, why did Minwoo not play in Mexico? And before he played at Cognizant, I was like, why are you playing Cognizant instead of Mexico? Like, Mexico's a perfect fit for you. Goes and finishes second at the Cognizant. Like, you know, like that's just the thing. But he's so talented. He should have been playing in more tournaments. He just hasn't been, you know, and I think he thought he might have thrived a bit better. Hasn't quite happened. Gonna need him to take care of business at the Open Championship, though, if he's even in that thing, you know. So we're gonna have to rock and roll there. But
Byron, I have a fantasy golf team. We've talked about it before. It's not for the FSGA one, but it's in a league with Nick is in the league. Tommy Stokey from Stochastic. Like there's a bunch of different people in it. I have the worst team that's ever been created in the history of a fantasy league. Minwoo is the second best player I have on that team. I never have enough players for these elevated events. Like this week, I'm starting Oberg, Hodges, Rose, Scott, and Brendan Todd with a bench of Gotterup and Webb Simpson. Like I don't have options on this team. This team right now is in second place. I am convinced that fantasy golf has absolutely no skills based off of this.
It's the B team. They're just getting it done with Mr. S and all sorts of random things, man. I don't know. And that's the thing. Golf is so random.
You might want to take a flyer on Thorbjornsen. Just hope that after he gets his card, he just like goes off because you need someone to get into these events.
I mean, unfortunately, like our waiver wire is super thin. He's already on a roster. He was picked up 6 weeks ago with somebody who had the foresight.
Really?
I did that last year with Oberg. And I think I was just so done with the league at that moment that I was like, I don't really care. And I wish he was on my team. For anybody out there that's playing, that is very good advice. I would pick him up if you have the potential to.
I did that with I have 2 leagues. I did that. I was like, this kid might just be a stud.
Yeah, I picked him up in the FSGA league that Byron and I do together in 2 separate leagues. I got him like after I saw somebody grab them 6 weeks ago. I'm like, I'm not going to make the mistake here. I'll grab him 5 weeks too early.
Yes. Shoot your shot, man. These guys coming out of college is like they're just incredibly talented and they're hitting the ground running way like literally sprinting compared to what guys have come out of, you know, their situations in the past. So Luke, thank you so much for showing up with us, man. We really appreciate you. I love your stuff. And please tell people where the heck they can find all 9 of your shows this week.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you having me on, guys. It was a pleasure talking. Of course, my YouTube channel is GS Luke DFS. That's where we're going to be doing all of our shows. Main show will be Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. So if you want to pick my brain a little bit, make sure to stop on by to that. But a lot of my content is posted on my Patreon page as well, which is in all my content in the description of that. So feel free to check it out if you guys want.
Yep. Luke's Patreon account is in the description below. I don't often say that on the show, so there we have it. Spencer, get us out of here, buddy.
Yeah, as everybody knows, you can find me on Twitter at TL Sports. You can find Byron at The Model Maniac. We have a lot of content over at RotoBaller. We cover everything from top to bottom, whether you're looking for DFS, betting, one-and-done contests. Our models are available. I don't know if we want to do a giveaway to close this, Byron.
You know what we're going to do is just post-show. We don't get enough post-show comments. Comment in the show. I pay attention to the comments. We'll do what's our giveaway going to be, Spencer?
We'll talk about it afterwards. Stay tuned. We'll retweet it out. We'll do something that we'll do a giveaway in the next little bit.
Perfect. Till then, how about we go and say who's going to finish DFL this week? You guys let me know in the comments below. First person to let me know who finishes dead freaking last for a RotoBaller PG situation there. Hit us in the comments after the show, not in the live chat. We need you guys to generate and hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, get this big old YouTube cog churning for us so that we can really, really go to the moon with you all. So Let us know who's going to finish DFL in the comments below. Thank you so much for making it to the show. Use code TEOF, use code Maniac over at RotoBaller if you're in the mood to join our premium side of things there. We really would love to have you guys so much. Till next week, we will catch you guys next time.